Good afternoon, everyone. It's Thursday again, the 18th of February, and today we're going to do the third episode of Okdo Academy. I'm having a lot of fun doing this, and I know that Philip is having it as well. So let's see if Philip is already here.
I am indeed. Thank you, Richard.
Hi, Philip. How are you doing?
Oh, very well, thanks. Yorkshire's sunny again, so the weather's good, and we've got an hour of fun ahead of us, so perfect day.
Do you still have snow?
No, gosh, no. It's not quite spring, but the first buds are showing on the trees, and the flowers are poking their way up through the ground, so any day now.
Cool. And anybody watching, is anybody having snow, or is everyone having some good weather and ready for spring? You know, maybe we should ask our guest. Today we have a guest for the first time. So I don't know if he's up to it, but let's ask Kevin how he's doing. Here's Kevin. Hi, Kevin.
Hi, everyone. How are we doing?
How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah. So it's good to be back in the office because I've been working at home for quite a while, but for this week at least, I'm back in the normal office. So it's good to see a few people.
Yeah. And a lot more quietness than at home, right? Or...
Well, yeah, the problem at home is I've got children, so it's
exactly.
Yeah, come to work for some peace and quiet.
Yeah, and to make clear, Kevin is from Kidtronic. Welcome, Kevin. And you're here to talk with us about the tools for the microbit. Philip knows a lot about it, and you know Philip for a long time. So very happy to have you around today. Maybe you want to tell something more about yourself or about Kidtronic?
Yeah, so as probably Philip would know, we were there sort of right at the beginning of the microbit. Sort of seems like a long time ago now, but quite a few companies came together to help sort of get the microbit off the ground, and we played a sort of a small part in that, really. So it's we've been there, I don't know how many years now, really, but it's been great to be involved. It's been good for us as a company because Kidtronic originally we sort of focused on more design and technology products, but we always did coding, but the microbit sort of given us, I guess, a new customer base, really, and it's something we've all enjoyed, and I think as with most things in life, coding is a big part now, isn't it, of lots of people's jobs. So it's good to be involved. We deal with lots of schools here in the UK and with other companies abroad. So it's been something that's been exciting for us.
Yeah, you have a lot of great content with lessons to do and to get started with all the technology. At least that's what I think.
Yeah, well, our focus has always been on schools. So we're not really a hobby company. No. We're a company that the products we produce are designed to be used in classrooms and by teachers and by students. So that's the approach we take.
Cool. Well, nice to have you on board today.
Thanks for joining. Yeah.
Great to say. Yeah. Some really good things. Annette says that schools, yes, very good. Fiona is here as well. Hi, Fiona. Nice that you're here. Philip.
Shall I kick off?
Can you kick off?
Yeah, let's do that. So let's start with a quick recap. This is our third lesson, obviously, and we've covered lots of ground. We've done some exciting stuff. We built a step counter in our first lesson, a cookie jar alarm in the second, or a jelly alarm for those of you who are attending, and we briefly had a look at the Kidtronic Halo. In the process, we've gone through quite a bit of the microbits functionality. We've worked with a couple of the sensors, most of the input and output stuff. So we're getting a good sense of what the microbit can do and what it's capable of. And today we're going to power it up. So we're going to see what we can do with peripherals. We're going to start looking at how to go beyond just the basic functionality of the microbit. And we have a really super piece of kit to show you today. I'll tell you more about what we're going to do today. We're going to look at loops and functions. We're going to build a thermometer, and we're going to build a clock. And if we have time, we'll also build an alarm clock. So lots of exciting stuff to do today. And of course, we have Kevin from Kidtronic. So if Richard and I mess up the coding, we've got Richard there. We've got Kevin there to help us out, which is really cool.
It's needed.
Richard, before we talk about the Halo and start programming it, should we look a little bit more at microbits history? I think we've looked over the last couple of weeks. Got an interesting story for you today, if you're interested.
Well, yeah, sure. I'll get my drink and I'll just sit back and listen.
Alrighty. Well, okay. So the last couple of lessons, we've looked a little bit at the history, and we've looked at all these weird and wonderful different microbit prototypes that have been developed throughout the course of 2015. Today, we're going to look at just one, a very special one. Now, it doesn't look all that special. It's called the launch board, and you'll see the photo. It's a bit dinged up because there aren't many of them around. But this board was built specifically for the official press launch, which was in July 2015. Only 100 of these were made, which means it's not quite as unique as some of the ones we looked at last week and the week before, where there were only 36 or even 24 units made. But this one is special, and it's special for a very particular reason. I'm going to show you the back. So if anyone out there has a microbit, or if you're familiar with the microbit, even if you've got an old one or a new one, have a look at the back, and there's something missing from the back. Can anyone spot that? Just seeing if anyone's sort of spotting that or adding a comment. Richard, why don't you, Kevin, what do you see or not see on the back of that microbit?
Well, having just sort of had a little glimpse at Richard's, I think it's missing the name microbit.
It certainly is, and that's the story that I wanted to tell you about. So it was about a week or two ago that Richard asked me whether microbit had always been called microbit, and the quick answer is yes. Right back as far as 2012, when people were conceiving and imagining the idea, the word microbit evolved and became the working title for the project. And even in 2015, when I started to get involved, everyone referred to it as the microbit. But of course, in those days, the brand name hadn't been secured, and all the legal stuff that surrounded using the word microbit was still up in the air, as it would always be. I mean, that's just normal. Now, the microbit was to be launched to the press in July 2015. There was a big event in London, and all the trade press were invited, and all sorts of dignitaries were there, and it was a really big event. And we were going to produce these boards for that event, so we could give them out to journalists, and people could get their hands on a real example. And it was just before we sent these boards to get produced that there was a legal challenge. Now, I can't say too much about it, but there was another brand out there whose brand name was a little bit like microbit. And there were some questions as to whether or not microbit could be used. The lawyers got a bit nervous, and they asked us not to. We sent this board, we produced it without microbit. About an hour later, everything got sorted, and all the lawyers shook hands, and they were happy and went out for lunch or whatever it is lawyers actually do. But in the meantime, of course, we produced this board without the word microbit on it. So it's kind of rare, and it's kind of interesting and kind of unique, and it's the only microbit you'll find that's got stuff printed on it that doesn't have the name microbit. So there's 100 of those, and they could well be in circulation. As I said, a number of them were given away to members of the press. So it's not. Yeah.
In the meantime, did you have another name for the microbit?
There was another name. It's so horrible, I don't even want to say it. It was Cody. Cody, which I think, to be fair, the word microbit is really powerful. It has great resonance with the past, the BBC Micro, and it's also quite descriptive. It is a bit, it's small, it's micro, it's perfect. You couldn't have come up with a better name. So it was super that all these little legal issues were non-issues, and we were able to call it microbit.
I think the iBit would be cool too, but would be a lot of lawsuits.
Yeah, iBit. Yeah. Well, I mean, BBC managed to get iPlayer, but that's another conversation, isn't it? Anyway, yeah. So
at least Annette likes the word Cody.
It sounds like the name of a child rather than the name of a computer, which is it's a fine name, but
that's true.
Anyway, microbits.
Nice story.
Yeah. Well, I've got another one for you next week. There's a little Easter egg that's hidden in some of the earlier microbits. So yeah, we'll talk about what that is.
Do you know what it is, Kiffin?
Do I? No. No. I think we've got one of these gold boards though. We've got one of those somewhere.
Okay.
Oh, nice. Maybe you can bring that next week if you pop in to hear about the Easter egg, Kevin. Bring the gold one and show us. I haven't
I'll
seen
see if I
one of
can
those.
find it. Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. All right. Well, we shouldn't spend too long on history, should we? Should we move on to the future and fun and exciting things? So what we're going to do to
future.
We shall. Kidtronic. Well, Kevin mentioned earlier that Kidtronic were part of the original microbit project going back early 2015 and probably before that. Kevin was being very modest. Kidtronic made a fantastic contribution, and the work that Kidtronic did on power consumption was the de facto standard for a long time in that. So Kidtronic have got great heritage and history with microbit. I think their inventor's kit's probably, I'm just guessing, but I would imagine it's one of the best-selling add-ons for microbit in the history of microbit, and it's a super little kit. But we're going to look at the Halo today. So before, tell you what, Richard, can we just show a few Halos before I just show the next slide?
Sure.
I've got a load because I've known Kidtronic for ages. So I've got this one here, which is it's got 12 LEDs on it, and I'm guessing this is from ages ago. It then evolved into something like this. There might be a few others in between that I don't have.
Yeah, that's kind of the first one that we kind of did, the bolt-on version.
Yeah, which is nice, but you had to screw your microbit on, which meant you kind of committed a microbit or a lot of time, which was fine. It was still a great piece of kit, but the latest one's fantastic. It's lovely. It's got 60 individually addressable LEDs. Now, I said this last week, we're going to call them Neopixels during the lesson because Neopixels is what everyone refers to them as. But we must remember Neopixels is a brand name owned by Adafruit, excellent company there. And so if we call them Neopixels, it's us using that as a generic, easy to use term. But the correct term is individually addressable LEDs. I think, Kevin, is that correct?
Yeah. They're based around, there's different, along with WS, is it 2812, something like that, the part number. But there's Will Semi make the LED themselves, which then Adafruit have brand named as for themselves as Neopixels.
Yeah, sure.
And Kevin, cool. Can you tell us something more about the SIP Halo?
The SIP Halo, yeah. So we did the original one, which was really popular with a smaller number of LEDs on. But the reason we wanted to do the HD version, you'll probably see this with the product really, is that we really wanted to try and move towards something that could be used as a clock. And obviously for a clock, you want something with 60 minutes minimum really, which is why we went to these. We couldn't do it originally, but these smaller LEDs came out at a sensible price. So we managed to be able to make one with 60 LEDs. But then we added some extra functionality as well to make it more useful for things you might want to do with time. So there's a real-time clock on board. And it's got things like the buzzer. Now, I know with microbit version 2, the buzzer is less important because you've got one on the V2. But, you know, most microbits out there in the big wide world are generally version 1, aren't they? So you've got the buzzer on there, which allows you to do things like alarm clocks and things like that. And we also put the microphone on there, so you could do things like your alarm's going off, and then you could shout at it or tell it to stop. So that's kind of the rough thinking around what we wanted to create with this HD Halo version with the 60 LEDs. We also wanted to put the power on board, so we put the battery pack on the back, because the problem with the original one is you're often powering it often with a separate battery pack on leads, which didn't feel so contained. And then we also moved towards that new surface mount version of the edge connector, which you didn't have before. But yeah, that's sort of showing that allows you to take your micro out, use a different project, and bring it back in very quickly. So there you go. Yeah,
it's a lovely addition, that, by the way. And being able to carry it around with you, it's a good size for a clock. It actually makes a fantastic clock.
Yeah, we were a little. On the original version, these surface mount connectors weren't available, so that gave us a problem really, that we would have liked to put the edge connector on the board, but it was bigger, but also the pins stick out the rear of the PCB, which means that the battery pack couldn't go on the back. So there was a few things really that needed to happen for us to be able to produce that product. The smaller LEDs, the new surface mount edge connectors, which came out a few years later.
Well, it's a super piece of kit, and alluding to what you mentioned earlier, for people with a microbit 1, if you're looking to sort of take advantage of some of the stuff that's available for microbit 2 relating to the sound and the microphone, the Halo is as good an upgrade option as any. It gives you that additional functionality, but of course, it gives you all these cool LEDs that you can play with as well. So should we start playing? Should we do a little bit with it then?
Yeah, I'm into it. Let's start.
Super. Well, just I was going to reiterate what Kevin had said about what's available on board, but we've gone through all that. I think before we chat, just want to reiterate a few things that are quite important that I found when using the Halo are very good to remember. And these are the sorts of things I trip up and forget sometimes. So bear in mind you will need batteries, and that's 3 AAA batteries to go in the back, same size batteries as go in the microbits. There's some code that we need to be aware of that we need to put into our on start block, which is setting the Halo display to show 60 zip LEDs, the code that you're seeing on screen now. When we look at the library, you'll see that we just need to drag and drop that into our on start. But also, I strongly recommend that if you're just testing or playing around, be careful about the brightness. These things are very bright. They'll burn your eyes out in no time at all. They're proper lights. They really are bright. So I always set the brightness down to 50. I find that that's about as much as I can manage without really glaring. The other thing that's worth remembering, and we will see this when we build some code, is that you will need to use the show function once you've set all your LEDs to a specific color or to whatever. So you'll see in that block there in the forever, I've shown how we usually would clear the screen, get rid of everything that's on the pixels, set some pixels to red, some to blue, however you want to do it. But then it's always important at the end to remember to add your Halo display.show. Now, I've been using a Halo on and off for years, and I still forget to put this in sometimes. I still flash my code, and I'm sitting there looking at thinking, why isn't it working? What's going wrong? Kidronic, what did you do? It's me. It's always me, and it's always me because I don't use the show block. So bear that in mind. Bear that in mind when you're doing your code, especially when you're testing. If your LEDs aren't displaying, make sure you put your show in. But those are the only things that I find I need to remember from time to time. Otherwise, it's really, really easy to use. But don't take my word for it. Let's write a little program quickly and just see how easy it actually is. So what we're going to do today, we're going to do a thermometer initially. Later, we're going to move on to a couple of other things. We're going to show you some loops and some functions that take advantage of some of the functionality. And then we're going to move on to building a clock. We'll see if we've got time. We'll build an alarm into it as well. But I have to say that Kidtronic have produced some amazingly easy-to-use guides to go with the Halos at Halo HD, and they're available on screen. We'll put the links up at the end, but they're available from Kidtronic's website. So we won't have time in this lesson to work through the entire alarm clock project that they've produced. We'll show you bits and pieces and hopefully give you the confidence to go off and build one yourself. And of course, you can always work through the tutorial that Kidtronic have produced. Loads of different tutorials. We'll put some links up at the end. So what we want to do is build a thermometer, and we're going to use the LEDs to show what the temperature is. We're going to keep it really simple. Our plan is to read the temperature off the microbit and then just display a light that corresponds to the temperature. So if it's 23 degrees, then we'll make pixel number 23 light up. And it's nice and simple, but it will demonstrate how to use the LEDs, and also will demonstrate a few of those principles I mentioned earlier. So, Richard, if you could be so kind, would you do the honors? Open MakeCode, walk us through
I'm ready to go. So I'll start a new project, and I will call this the temperature. And when I go into the library, I go to Advanced, go to the extensions. Let's search for zip Halo. There it is. And I I've got all the blocks for the Halo HD. I'll go
So
to the...
thank you. Sorry. So yeah, we'll start off by using that set one. So you've got, so the Halo knows, or the MakeCode knows it's 60. Super. And then, I mean, shall we change the brightness? I think it makes sense, although I don't think we'll blind ourselves looking on screen.
Okay, I've got the brightness done as well.
Now, all we want our code to do is keep checking the temperature and then displaying it on our Halo LEDs. So let's have a look, Richard, at the options that we have inside, because there's loads of different options within the MakeCode library, and most of them are self-explanatory. So if you whiz through, you'll see, and people, you should really just play around. It's, you know, it's so much fun trying all the different blocks and seeing what they do and checking the effect of them.
Out of
We're
my
going
experience, you cannot break anything by coding it.
You can't, absolutely not. So we're going to use the well, let's start with a clear. We're looking in the forever block. We're going to keep running through this block over and over again. And what would be good is each time the block loads and each time we read the temperature, we get rid of the old reading, because we don't want to end up with all the lights being lit just because the temperature keeps changing. So each time we do an iteration of code, each time we read and display the temperature, we'll hide it first. Now, the next thing we're going to do is literally read the temperature and light up the corresponding LED. So within the Halo zip, within the MakeCode, there's a block in there, Richard, called, I can't see it. My eyes. It says
this
show.
one. Halo display set ziplet 0 to red.
That's the one. Super. So if you bump that in there, and we don't want the LED 0. We actually want to light up the LED that corresponds to temperature.
Yeah.
So if you go into the input, is it?
And then I'll go to temperature.
And we can just drop that in there. And look, I mean, this code could fail. The LEDs go from 0 to 60, don't they? So if it's like -5 degrees, I don't know what will happen. And equally, if it's like 62 degrees, I don't know what will happen. But, you know, it's very rare that we'll get those extremes of temperature. And this is a simple thermometer. We just want to show you a simple one. So what are you adding in there, Richard? Are you adding a pause?
Yep, the pause button, so it will give it some time to do a new measurement to show it.
That makes sense. So if we were to save and load this right now.
So don't you need the show command that you were talking about? Or was that you?
Awesome. Thanks very much. We do, yes. At the moment, it won't actually show the LEDs. They won't light up. So always remember to add your show.
This is why Kevin's here.
Yeah. The kind of point behind the show, though, is that you might want to almost set a pattern or something that you're intending to show. So you might be doing lots of commands where you're trying to configure something that you're going to display. You don't want the user to see that happening, do you? You just want to see the result when you're ready to show it to them.
So it's almost double buffering using the Halo HD. Very nice. Brilliant. Richard has also put the show before the pause. Now, there's a very good reason for that. The pixel will only light up, obviously, when the show function is executed. And if we were to pause first, then all that would happen is it would pause without lighting up. The LED would light up very briefly, and then the loop would start again, and it would disappear and clear. So it's important that Richard's put that in the right place. Now, we could flash this code onto our Halo HD, and if anyone's looking at this at home, I encourage you to do that. We've obviously got a bit of a time constraint, so we're not going to flash everything that we do. But what I will say is this is nice, but it can be improved. So the problem we have with this code is that it's just the LED corresponding to temperature that shows up. If the temperature is 23 degrees, just the LED at 23 will show up. Now, normally with a thermometer, you have a scale. It's quite normal when you're looking at for example, an analog thermometer for the mercury to be at a certain point. There's an expectation of temperature being shown as almost as a bar. And it would look much better in our code if we were actually going to do that, I think, Richard. So what I'd like to do, we looked at loops in some of the previous lessons, and I think what I want to do is create a little loop here. And what we're going to do is we're going to light up all the pixels from 0 up to the temperature. So instead of just showing pixel 23, if the temperature is 23, we'll show 0 all the way up to 23. Now that means we basically want to set every pixel within the range 0 to 23. We'll set them to red. And for that, we're going to use a loop. Now, Kevin, please jump in if there's a simpler way of doing any of this, because I know the library's got some really great functions and some super shortcuts. So again, just jump in. But what I'd like you to do, Richard, is go to the loops. And let's get a loop that's got an index in it. Now, what the logic of a loop is that it executes the same code over and over again. So if you have a loop with 10 iterations, the code inside that loop will iterate 10 times. Now, it could be that on each iteration, you want something slightly different to occur. With our code, we want to iterate from 0 to the temperature as it is right now. And then each time we loop, we want to light up an LED. So if we go in our loop from 0 to temperature, which I think you added that in.
Yeah.
If we go from 0 to the temperature.
Hold on. I just threw my block away.
Right, so the loop would read for index from 0 to temperature, and we'll read the temperature in at that point.
Yep, I lost this one as well.
Well, I think it's a good demonstration that even someone as professional and as experienced as Richard, it's easy to make these little mistakes. Everyone does it, even professional programmers. So
I'm really good in messing it up.
All right, so what Richard has done is he's added code that says that's going to run from 0 to whatever the temperature is. Inside that loop, he's then said, and I can't read it, it's too small on my screen, but you will then be lighting up.
Larger for you. Is this better?
Yeah, that's better. So each index, each value for index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., we're going to light up the corresponding LED on the halo. Now, I think that looks fine. I'm just looking at the code. You've got the light up. Super. All right. Why don't we flash that? Now, Richard, do you want to put me back on screen for a second? Because I have one here that I made earlier. It's very similar to what we're trying to do. It is a thermometer. I could probably make it go up if I heated it. And the lights start from 0 and go all the way around to, it says it's about 26 or 27, and that'll be because the ambient temperature of the microbit is what's being picked up rather than the temperature of the air. So if you have a look, my thermometer goes all the way around, but I've put a nice little twist on it. So up until 10 degrees, it's blue, because blue is kind of the color of cold, and then from 10 onwards, it's red. Should we just make that little change to the code, Richard, and
Yeah, sure.
just make our thermometer a little bit more cool. So inside that loop, we've got 4 index from 0 to temperature, and then it's going to just light everyone as red. But why don't we put a little if statement, and we'll say that if the temperature is less than, say, 10, light it up in blue, otherwise light it up in red. So straight under the, if you drop that straight under the for loop, if you can. So yeah, we go inside the for loop. Now the condition that we want there, where it says if true, we're going to build a condition. So in the logic blocks, grab a logic condition for us. One of the comparison ones, we're going to compare temperature, or no, sorry, Richard. Yes, index, good, very good. If the index is less than or equal to, we could say 10, we could say 12, it's fairly arbitrary. Pick a number that feels very cold to you. We'll show it as blue, and then in the else area, so when the temperature is greater than that, whatever our threshold is, we'll show it at red. And that's the code. That's the code that will give you this super, really nice little thermometer that I've showed you a moment ago, where you get some blue lights, and then as it gets warmer, you get red lights. Now, you could get really clever and creative with this. So I've obviously just used 2 different colors, but you could excuse me, increase the brightness perhaps as you go around, so that the hotter it is, the brighter or the redder it gets. But there's all sorts of ways that you can really improve the display. We've been very simple. There's countless infinitesimal numbers of colors that are available to you, and we've used 2 of them, which is slightly boring, but we do have an eye on time. And I think that the challenge is, this is how to build a simple thermometer. Go out there, create a much more exciting and interesting one, and hopefully let us know about it as well.
Yeah, and we can put sounds in as well.
Yeah,
it's an alarm.
Absolutely. And I'm sure if we can build a better thermometer, Kidtronic themselves will probably be interested in it. So there's always great interest from the community with any of these projects. So there's your thermometer anyway. And the point there was just to demonstrate really how to light up an individual pixel and how simple it was. Excuse me.
Do you have any feedback, Kevin? Anything you want to add?
No, I think it's to me, it's a nice way of doing it, because like you're saying, you're getting to understand these different blocks, the if statements and the loops. I think it's a good thing to learn. I do think we have a bar graph block that you could potentially use, which you can just set the start and finish, and it fills it, I believe. So that might be a different way of doing it. But you've got more control with yours, haven't you? Because you can, like you say, you can have these different scenarios where there's different colors or different brightnesses quite easily.
Exactly.
Well, I like the point you've made. There's always so many ways to do things, and in different ways. There's rarely a right way. There's often a wrong way, but there's no right way. And there's the bar graph, you could use that. There's a few other sort of ways you could do it. I think the way we've shown is probably about as simple as it gets. But by all means, explore, use some of the other functionality, and come up with different ways of doing it.
The thing is, if we create a simple block that makes it easier for the user, often what you're doing though is you're just hiding things from the user, really, because you're doing stuff in the background, and sometimes it's nice to actually learn and understand how it's actually done.
Yeah,
and it's great that the block is there for when you're a beginner, and you can get the effect, like with the alarm. There's a super alarm function. We might get a chance to look at it later, but I think we'll be out of time. It's well documented, obviously, in the documentation. But you can use the alarm block, or you could actually go off and build it yourself, just using if statements. So no, it's great. It's great. It's actually a great challenge to come up with different ways of doing the same thing as well. So, well, we should press on. I do want to talk briefly. I know we talked about loops. There's one thing we haven't talked about in our academy lessons yet. We're on lesson 3, and that is functions. Now, I find with programming, it's always helpful to try and relate programming concepts back to real world concepts. For example, a variable, which is a number that can be a variety of different numbers. In the real world, your bank account balance, or the amount of cash you have in your pocket, that's a variable. The number of times you have a cup of coffee in a day, that's also a variable. But these programming concepts are very much present in real life. You can see them. And loops, we talked about loops earlier, and we all live out loops every week. Our Monday to Friday is a 5-day loop. It's a loop of 5 similar days where we go off to work, or we go off to school, or we spend our time hunting for work, whatever the situation is. We go through this loop of 5 days, and then we have the weekend, which is a loop of 2 days, and then go through another loop of 5 days, and each day is a bit different. Like Richard showed you in that last loop, where we had index, and each time we went through the loop, the index was different. Our loop during the week is similar. We have a for day equals 0 to 5, 0 to 4, or 1 to 5, or Monday to Friday. On Monday, we might have pasta for dinner. On Tuesday, it might be pizza. Wednesday, it's a roast. So loops are also concepts that are quite that have an analog in the real world, and so too do functions. I just want to look at functions a little bit in a moment in the coding context. But if you think about it, there are actions that we all repeat day after day, and we do the same thing. So I like a cup of coffee, and I'll have 2 or 3 cups a day. And when I make coffee, I go through exactly the same steps every time I make coffee. So in my head, I say, make coffee, and then I go on auto and I pour the water and all of that. But in computer terms, making coffee is a bit like a function. It's a set of instructions, or it's a process that we go through again and again and again. It's the same every time. And we can code that in MakeCode as well. So rather than carry on, I'll show you what it actually means in a computer program. So Richard, can we start up another MakeCode?
Here I am.
Thanks very much, and add in the necessary stuff at the beginning just to get us started.
Yep, I will. I'll get the library in.
Now, I don't know about everyone else, but when I get something like a Halo zip or anything with a display, the first thing I want to do is move pixels around and make things move, and then I want to make them bounce, and then I want to control them with the buttons, etc. But I really like movement. It kind of appeals to me, especially when I'm playing around and learning how to use a display. So what we're actually going to do here is we're going to use our concept of loops, and we're going to make the lights light up in sequence as we go round and round the Halo LED. So we're going to use loops for that. So in that forever block, Richard, if you could just drop a loop in there, like we did before, one of the index ones. And the 60 LEDs on the Halo are addressed, the numbers that you use to talk to them is 0 to 59. Now, I won't go into detail about why computer programmers start at 0, but there is a good reason. So we're going to run through 0 to 59. In each case, we are going to, what have you got there? I can't read it very well. In each case, we're just going to light up the pixel. No, Richard, if you can actually put the clear right at the beginning, so we only need to do it once. So we'll clear once. Inside that loop, we'll then say set zip LED to red. Actually, yeah, so that's going to go through. In fact, Richard, you were right. You had the clear in the right place. So
I know, but I didn't want to say it.
You should have. It's programming is testing and reiterating. I mean, I don't think anyone ever gets it right the first time. And to be fair, I mean, let's be honest, Richard, we wrote these programs earlier in the week, and we're trying to remember them now rather than writing them from the top of our heads. So, but it took a few iterations to get this working right. So you need now the show, and then a little pause. 50 milliseconds, whatever, it doesn't matter. So what this will now do is it will iterate. We'll go through the number 0 to 59. At the beginning of the loop, it will clear whatever's on screen, so nothing's shining. It will then make whichever number we're at, it will make that pixel shine, red, blue, red. It'll wait for about 50 milliseconds. It'll show it. It'll then wait for 50 milliseconds, so that light shows for 50 milliseconds. Then the loop will start again. It goes up by 1, so we're now at the next LED. The screen gets cleared and the next LED gets lit up. So that's cool. That will run us up from 0 to 59. Now, I'd like to just, I'd like to go up to 59 and then go back down again to 0. So can we're just going to copy the loop, Richard. Let's make lives easier for ourselves. So yeah. If you take that for loop and just copy it, and then just drop it on underneath. Now, as I said, we've got a loop that goes from 0 to 59, but what we want to do now is go from 59 back down to 0. So if you're watching this in a recording, I challenge you to pause and have a little think about how you would do that. The numbers that we have go from 0 to 59, but we now in this loop want them to go from 59 down to 0. How are you going to do that? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to use some maths, and Richard's going to take a simple addition operator or subtraction operator, and we're going to say 59 minus the index. And what that means is that when the index is 0, the value, the LED that we're lighting will be number 59. So 0. As you see, that'll 59 minus 1. I won't go through the whole thing. And what that means is that the numbers, in fact, that we're using will then go from 59 down to 0. So what this code will now do is it will light the pixel and it will go from 0 to 59, and then the pixel will shoot back from 59 to 0. In fact, Richard, why don't you make the one on the way back blue?
Yeah,
So
on the way back.
when it goes up, it's red. When it goes down, it's blue.
Yep.
Now,
Done.
again, we could flash this and show it to you, but hopefully you'll take our word for it that the code works and the pixel jumps up. We'll show you the next one. We're just going to make one more change. So what I was mentioning earlier is functions, and I want to use functions here. Now, the code that we have at the moment will go up, and then it will go down, and then it will go up, and then it will go down, and it will go up, and it will go down. And that's because that forever block just keeps executing. Now, what if we want to go up, and then up again, and then down, up again, etc.? How are we going to do that? Well, this is where functions become very helpful to us. So, Richard, if you could go back, let's just demonstrate it, and then hopefully by seeing it in action, it'll help explain. A function is a block of code that gets executed over and over again, and you can actually call that block of code from other places in your code as well. So, Richard's going to create a function, and we'll call it clockwise, go clockwise or something so that we indicate this is the one that goes up, if you like. Call it go clockwise. And done. Nice one. Thanks, Richard. Now, what I'd like you to do, Richard, is drag the whole of that first. Yeah, okay. The only part of MakeCode that can be frustrating, but never mind. It's easy enough to work around. So we've now built a function that does exactly the same as what we had in our forever loop. And I guess some people might be wondering why we would do that. Well, let's try and answer that question in a second, but let's quickly build a second function, if you could, Richard, a go counterclockwise. And obviously what we're going to do is put the reverse code into that. Now, there are cleverer ways of doing this, I've got to tell you, but when it comes to the basics, this is a really solid basic way of doing it, and there's nothing wrong with it at all. Now, as I said earlier, we've create these functions, and we can call these functions from anywhere in our code. So what I would like you to do, please, Richard, is go back into the functions block. And as you'll see, you now have blocks that you can use that will actually take those functions and call them. And we can put those blocks wherever we want. So Richard's going to put one, in fact, put a couple. Yeah, there you go. All right. So this will show, this will demonstrate slightly different to the previous example. The previous example went up and then down and then up and then down. But because we're using function calls, we can call either the up or the down as many times as we want. So we've made a slight change there. So I've actually got one here that I made earlier, Richard. So if you want, let's just put that on screen. So mine goes up once. I think it goes up twice, up again, and then it goes down. So I've got two function calls. In my forever loop, I'm calling go up or go clockwise twice. And then after that, I call go anti-clockwise, and we go down anti-clockwise. And that's quite fun. I actually really enjoy stuff like that. I really enjoy making these things light up and move them. It's super. But obviously, those functions aren't very sophisticated, but we could use them in different orders and different sequences. And it's much easier and neater than writing the code over and over again. And it also means, in fact, if you were to look at your forever block, you could read the code and it would just be easier to understand what's going on. So functions make our lives a lot easier. They make it easier to repeat code. All right, do you know what? We've talked about a lot of coding. I think it's time to talk about something a bit lighter for a moment before we get into some more coding and look at the alarm clock. Richard, it's time for our Power Up of the Week session, which we started last week. I'm just going to try and second get slides ready.
You want to show it or shall I show it?
I'm perfectly happy for you to show if you like. I have a slide if you want, but I don't mind.
No, I think I can do it live.
Brilliant.
Hold on.
So each week, Richard and I are going to try and find a really exciting build, something that someone's done with MakeCode that's really cool. And this week we found a fantastic one.
Yeah, this is really cool. And I have to show my screen a different way. So hold on. Share, stop screen. Okay, here it is. Philip.
It's a tea dunker. Someone, in fact, I've got his name here. His name is Vincent Bernard. I hope that's pronounced accurately.
Vincent.
He's Canadian, and there's some amazing stuff being done in Canada on microbit, I must add. But this I just love. It's a tea maker. So you pour your water in, and you use the button on your microbit to dunk your tea bag. Now you could go even further. You could create a remote control or an IoT trigger to make it jump up and down. But I just love the humor of this. It's so perfect. It really is what microbit was all about. And fantastic little builds like this. Does that look like Lego that's being used as well? And I mean, there's so many different skills that have gone into building this. So there's the creativity of thinking of it in the first place. There's the coding, which is obviously important. There's building the rig. You see the wooden platform that's being built. There's getting the motor. So many different levels. It's just an absolutely fantastic build. So congratulations to Vincent. You are our prize winner this week, and your no prize will not be in the post to you at no point in the future. But it's the honor, of course. Right.
And I think it's quite cool that kids can use Lego to start building stuff, and to use the microbit, and to use whatever kind of cardboard, etc., to start going.
Well, that's Richard. When you mentioned Lego, I thought, yes, I agree. But you know what? The best thing for building for me is things like polystyrene and cardboard. I'm not a very good handy person. I'm not very good at cutting things. I always end up cutting my fingers. But it's amazing what you can do with a bit of polystyrene or a bit of hard cardboard. So next time you get something from Amazon, don't throw the cardboard away. Think about creative ways you can use it to enhance your microbit. Whether you just build a little enclosure for your clock, that might be an idea, or whether you build something as amazing as a tea bag dunker. Anything can be a building material, but polystyrene and cardboard are particularly good, especially for beginners and people who don't have a lot of tools. You know, all you need is a knife, a creative brain, and the world's your oyster.
Kevin, what's the coolest thing that you made?
That we've made, well, we were trying to make, and it's not quite there, is a walking ATAT model. So, you know, we 3D printed an ATAT, and then we used servos, and then we were trying to use our all-in-one robotic, our 16 servo board, so we could drive multiple servos to get it walking. So it looks amazing, but the weight of the model is a slight challenge. So we've never quite got it walking how we'd like to. The idea was we were going to take it to some shows, because Star Wars is always something that seems to generate a lot of interest. But there is a point when you spend 2 weeks on something that you think, well, maybe we need to cut our losses. But yeah, that's quite a fun thing. But I think servos in general, as you guys were saying about cardboard and things, servos work really well with microbits, and I've seen some fantastic models that children have done, making dinosaurs that, you know, raw, you know, those kind of things that can be made easily. They can be painted and decorated, and the components you need to do it are very cheap.
Yeah, sounds very cool. I'm really curious about the Star Wars model now.
Finish that up and see if you can win next week's prize of the week, Kevin. Actually, you know, while we've got you chatting, are there any secret products that you guys are doing? You're always coming up with such cool stuff. What have you got on the horizon? What can we expect from Kiptronic soon?
Yeah, well, the thing that's been most interest lately, I guess, is we've produced a greenhouse kit for growing plants, and we wanted to do something that was usable out of the box. So we've had a sort of a custom greenhouse enclosure made, and that's nice because you could use it on a desk, or you could use it at home. You can grow things like cress or micro herbs and things, and there's a lot of coding and learning you can do around it. But the components that go into that product can also be taken out, and you could build it into a bigger full-size greenhouse, or, you know, a larger propagator to grow bigger things. So that's certainly gone down well, and I think environmental sensing and things like that is becoming more of interest. So that's the kind of one of the areas we're looking at more. You know, you see the things, don't you, in the world now, different climate, well, there's a snowstorms over in Texas, isn't there? You know, there's a lot that people want to know about. So yeah, that's good.
Well, we'll keep our eyes open. As I said, it's always a pleasure to see the great stuff that comes out of your factories or your inventing labs, whatever they're called.
Yeah, the development guys.
Yeah, no, some great stuff. Thanks, Kevin. I mean, we've got.
Last one.
I was going to say we better build this clock. We told everyone we would, and we've almost run out of time. But thankfully, it's really, really simple to build. And equally, Richard has already prepared the beginnings for us. Thanks, Richard.
Yep.
I
started a little bit, not totally, but yeah.
Now, I think that building this, it just requires a bit of a knowledge of the blocks that are available. Could you open up the Halo blocks for us, Richard, and just show us what we've got in terms of time, what our options are? There's quite a few. The first one is set the time, and that's as simple as it sounds. You would set the hour, time, and seconds. You can also set the date. It's a real-time clock with date, year, etc. And I believe, Kevin, that there's a version of the Halo Zip that has a coin cell that will actually preserve the time after the microbit's been turned off.
So yeah, there's this version where so there's a real-time clock chip, but that's volatile. So you can set the time and date and all those kind of things, and it will remember it provided there's still power to the board, and that's fine. It doesn't need much power at all. But we do a version where instead of the battery pack on the back, it has a plug-in connector and a coin cell retainer. So you can leave it powered forever, you know, using a plug-in. If you wanted to make a bedside clock, you could plug it into the mains. But if you accidentally turn the power off, the little coin cell means that you don't lose all the time and date information.
Yeah, it's very nice, and it's. I mean, this makes a great alarm clock. It's not a toy by any means. It's really, really cool. All right, so let's start by setting the time. Just throw a few arbitrary numbers in there, Richard, because we're all in different time zones anyway. You're doing that in the end start. Good. Now we saw a moment ago how easy it is to light up individual LEDs, and if we go back once Richard's done that into the clock version there, the clock blocks. You'll see, and again, it's too small for me to see on the screen, but there's a block. I think it's a bit further down where you can get the current hours, get the current seconds, get the current minutes. There we go. Read time. So it's read time as a string. That means read it as a word. Read it as a number. That's going to be useful. And then read hours for the zip display. We'll see that in a minute. But let's start by putting seconds on screen, shall we, Richard? So if you could go back into your forever block, start by putting a clear. Do you know what? Yep. Start by putting a clear and a show. Let's get them in there right at the beginning so we don't forget about them later. That's what I always do. So we've got a show, we've got a clear, and we know we've got to drop whatever else we're going to put. We're going to drop them in between those two. We've done that before. We want one piece of code that's going to take one of those pixels, see how many seconds there are, and light up the pixel accordingly. So we'll use the same block. Drop that in there. Now, this is where it's so easy and fantastic to use. We go back into our clock functionality. We could read. Let's use that one, Richard. Yeah, I was going to say we could use the read seconds as a number, read minutes as a number, and they'll always be read between 0 and 59, so they're perfect. But of course, have a think about hours. The hours are going to be between 0 and 24, and there's actually 60 pixels. So you to get the right sort of pixel lighting up, you might need to be a bit creative. But again, thank you to Kidtronic for thinking of all of that for us. So what Richard's done while I've been talking is set the first block to hours, and we're going to make that blue. Set the first pixel. We're then going to move along and do minutes. Oh, I've got one of these that I've pre-coded. I'll try and flash it while you do that, Richard.
Okay, then I'll do it slowly. Make some mistakes.
Oh, right, yeah, just by accident. Right?
Yeah, by accident. Let me see, I've got the hours, I've got the minutes. And now we can do the seconds.
Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, what color shall we do the seconds? do you think?
Oh dear. How about white?
White? Yeah. Hold on. Are you ready yet?
I am ready, indeed I am. And his. So the code that Richard has just written, you would obviously save it, flash it, download it, put it onto your
Hold on.
micro.
Yeah.
When you do.
Oh, hey, Kevin.
Hello, Kevin.
There he is. Yeah.
And that's my clock. So you'll see I've actually set it to 12. There's my minutes. So it's 20 to 12. I don't know why I set it to that. I guess when I was testing it, that was what the time was. You'll see the little red is my seconds ticking up. I can tell how many minutes there are because of the green, and the blue is the hours. Perfect. It's a lovely clock. Really, really nice and effective. And
Cool.
we were going to do alarm clocks and all sorts of additions and add-ons, but we've only got 3 minutes left, haven't we?
Yeah, maybe we can do that. We can add time with the A button and with the B button.
We had a few prepared, didn't we, Richard? We had one prepared where you can set the time, and another one prepared where you can set an alarm. Now, we've in the 2 minutes. Do you think we can do the alarm quickly?
Yeah, or shall we just wrap up and do this next week?
Well, maybe you should wrap up. There's so much great material produced by Kidtronic, and if what people have seen inspires them, and if you feel confident now to go off and use it, I'd recommend having a look at one of the tutorials. And as I said, we'll put links in. Work through them carefully and slowly, and it's just concepts that you've seen either today or in the previous lessons drawn together. And I would also challenge you, try and do it better than Kidtronic have done it. I'm sure, Kevin, you'd love to hear if someone out there can build a better alarm clock, right?
Oh yes, this is always surprised by the ideas people come up with. You know, I like the idea of this kind of, you know, you see the grow clocks you get for children where it tells them when it's time to get up because it starts to give this daylight style effect. So you could make the whole display light the room up more so they know it's their time when they can get out of bed. There's lots you could do.
Yeah, we would love to see all the results from the children who are creating this and send the videos in or pictures or come up with ideas. Because there's, as you can see, a lot of more possibilities to create with the lessons and with the clocks and with the lights. I really like the lights. You can do really cool stuff with it and interact with 2 microbits, etc. But yeah, the time for this week is already up, and next week we've got a full agenda. Philip, can you give a sneak peek or tell something about what you want to do next week?
IoT. We are going to go online. We're gonna hit the cloud. We're going to do some IoT stuff.
Okay, so next week we're gonna go wild with everything, but we're basically gonna go all over the internet.
Yeah, I should say IoT means Internet of Things for anyone who doesn't know, and it's very much accessible to beginners. So if you heard me say IoT and you didn't know what I was talking about, pop in for lesson 4. We'll explain what it's all about, and we'll also show you how you can use the microbit to take advantage of the cloud. And we'll also chat about why you would want it. Why would you bother?
At the end of the stream, in a few minutes, we will stay here online to share the links with all the code that we made. So stay on the page, click on the links that we send over. If you have any comments, just put them online, and start playing. I want to thank you, Kevin, very much for passing by this week and joining us.
Thank you.
No, it's been great. Anytime.
Cool. Thank you very much, Philip.
Thanks, Richard, and thanks everyone for
thanks for watching, and see you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.